Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Quote of the day, and be patient, for indeed Allah does not allow to be lost the reward of those who do good. Today, the topic of presentation is Z-test for mean and proportion. I am Dr. Rabbia Iqbal, PGR Community Medicine, and I am presenting under the kind supervision of Professor Dr. Saira Afzal. Learning objectives of today's presentation is introduction to Z-test, null hypothesis and alternative hypothesis, formula to calculate Z-test for mean, hypothesis step for mean and example, formula to calculate Z-test for proportion, hypothesis step for proportion and examples, and MCQs. Learning outcomes. At the end of this presentation, participant will be able to understand the Z-test, null hypothesis, alternative hypothesis, hypothesis step for mean and proportion, example of Z-test for mean and proportion, and MCQs. Introduction to Z-test. The Z-test is a statistical method used to determine whether there is a significant difference between sample statistics and population parameter, or between two sample groups when the population standard deviation is known. Purpose of Z-test: to test hypothesis about a population mean, a population proportion, difference between two mean or two proportion. Null hypothesis, denoted by H naught, it is a statistical hypothesis that states that there is no difference between a parameter and a specific value, or there is no difference between two parameters. For mean, null hypothesis is mu is equal to mu naught. The population mean is equal to specified value. For proportion, null hypothesis is P is equal to P naught. The population proportion is equal to specified value. Alternative hypothesis. It is denoted by H1. The alternative hypothesis is a statement that contradicts the null hypothesis. It represents that you want to prove or what you suspect might be true on the basis of your research or data. It might be two-tailed, right-tailed, left-tailed, two-tailed. For mean, mu is not equal to mu naught, and for proportion, P is not equal to P naught. Use when you want to detect any difference higher or lower. Right-tailed, H1, mu is greater than mu naught for mean, and for proportion, P is greater than P naught. It is used when you expect the sample mean to be greater than the population mean. In left-tailed, for mean, mu is less than mu naught, and for proportion, P less than P naught. It is used when you expect the sample mean to be less than the population mean. Next is Z-test for mean. A Z-test for mean is a statistical test used to determine whether the mean of a sample is significantly different from the known or hypothesized population mean, assuming that the population standard deviation is known. A Z-test is used when the sample size is larger than 30, the population standard deviation is known, data is approximately normally distributed, you are testing the mean of sample against the population mean. Statistical test. Test value is equal to observed value minus expected value divided by standard error. Observed value, the value of the sample mean, expected value, the value of population mean, and in the denominator, sigma divided by square root n, where sigma is the population standard deviation and n is the sample size. This is the formula for Z-test of mean. Z is equal to x bar minus mu naught divided by sigma divided by square root n, where x is sample mean, mu naught is population mean, sigma population standard deviation, and n is sample size. Step for solving hypothesis testing. Number 1, state the hypothesis and identify the claim. Step 2, find the critical value. Step 3, compute the test value. Step 4, make the decision to reject or not the null hypothesis. And step 5 is summarize the result. Now, step 1, state the hypothesis and identify the claim. State the hypothesis, alternative hypothesis or the null hypothesis. In null hypothesis, mu is equal to mu naught. In alternative hypothesis, mu is not equal to mu naught. Mu is greater than mu naught. Mu is less than mu naught. Now, step 2, find the critical value, level of significance, alpha, that is 1%, 5%, 10%, level of confidence, C, 1 minus alpha. Readable, depend on if hypothesis one-tailed or two-tailed. This is the distribution curve. This is the area under curve. The symmetrical around the center represent the z-score. The center point is mean is 0. At the x-axis, z-score measure how standard error a sample mean in the population mean. It is negative toward the left side and positive toward the right side. These are the tails, uh, which is critical region. If value fall in the critical region, the null hypothesis is rejected. If this is the middle area between the two critical area, if we calculate the z which fall in this area, we fail to reject the null hypothesis. Step 3, compute the test value. This is the formula. Step 4, make the decision to accept or reject the null hypothesis. Depend upon the calculated z value, reject or accept the null hypothesis if it lies in or not in rejection region, respectively. Step 5, summarize the result. Summarize the result depend upon the results and decision to reject or not the claim. Next is one-tailed and two-tailed test. A one-tailed test indicates that null hypothesis should be rejected when the test value is in critical region on one side of the mean. A one-tailed test either right-tailed test or left-tailed test depending on the direction of inequality of alternative hypothesis. In two-tailed test, the null hypothesis should be rejected when the test is in either of the two critical regions. This is the example of right-tailed test. In Pennsylvania, the average IQ score is 101.5. The variable is normally distributed, and the population standard deviation is 15. A school superintendent claimed that the student in her school district have an IQ higher than average of 101.5. She select a random sample of 30 students and find the mean of the test score is 106.4. Test claim that alpha is equal to 0.05. Solution. Step 1, state the hypothesis and identify the claim. Null hypothesis mu is equal to 101.5, and in alternative hypothesis mu is greater than 101.5, which is the claim. Step 2, find the critical value. Since alpha is 0.05 and the test is right-tailed test, the critical value is z is equal to plus 1.6. Step 3, compute the test value. This is the result. Z is equal to 1.79. Now make the decision. Since the test value is 1.79, which is greater than the critical value 1.65, the decision is to reject the null hypothesis. And in step 5, summarize the result. There is enough evidence to support the claim that the IQ of the student is higher than the state average IQ. This is the example of two-tailed test. The Medical Rehabilitation Education Foundation report that the average cost of rehabilitation per stroke victim is $24,672. To see if the average cost of rehabilitation is different at a particular hospital, a researcher select a random sample of 35 stroke victims at the hospital and find that the average cost of their rehabilitation is $26,343. The standard deviation of the population is $3,251 at alpha is equal to 0.01. Can it be concluded that the average cost of the stroke rehabilitation at a particular hospital is different from $24,672? Solution. State the hypothesis and identify the claim. Null hypothesis mu is equal to $24,672, and in alternative hypothesis mu is not equal to $24,672, which is the claim. Step 2, find the critical value. Since alpha is 0.01 and the test is two-tailed test, the critical values are positive 2.58 and minus 2.58. In step 3, compute the test result. Z is equal to 3.04. In step 4, make the decision, reject the null hypothesis since the test value fall in the critical region. In step 5, summarize the result. There is enough evidence to support the claim that the cost of the rehabilitation at the particular hospital is different from 24,672 US dollar. Now come to the test, Z test for proportion. Proportion. It is the ratio that indicates the relation in magnitude of a part of whole. Nominator is always included in denominator, usually expressed in percentage. Z-test for proportion. The Z-test for proportion is used when you want to compare a sample proportion to a known population proportion to see if there is a significant difference. Formula for Z-test for proportion, Z is equal to P head minus P naught divided by square root P naught into 1 minus P naught divided by N, where P head is sample proportion, P naught is sample population proportion, and N is sample size. These are the steps for solving the hypothesis tests. Same step 1, state the hypothesis and identify the claim, find the critical value, 3, compute the test value, 4, make the decision to reject or accept the null hypothesis, and 5, summarize the result. Z-test for single proportion. The Z-test for single proportion is a statistical test used to determine whether the proportion of certain characteristic in a sample is significantly different from the known or hypothesized population proportion. This is the formula. Z is equal to P head minus P naught divided by square root P naught into 1 minus P naught divided by N. Example of Z-test for a single proportion. A public health department claimed that 30% of the population has received the flu vaccine this season. You survey 150 people in a community and find 60 of them have received the flu vaccine. We want to test whether the observed proportion is significantly different from 30% using a Z-test for single proportion. Solution. Step 1, state the hypothesis. Null hypothesis P is equal to 0.30. The true proportion of vaccinated people is 30%. Alternative hypothesis P is not equal to 0.30. The true proportion is different from 30%. This is two-tailed test. Step 2, identify the sample data. Sample size 150, number of vaccinated individuals 60. This is the sample proportion 0.40. Step 2, calculate the test statistics. Put the value in this formula. Result is Z is approximately equal to 2.67. Step 4, compare the critical value at 95% confidence interval for two-tailed tests. The critical Z value are plus minus 1.96. Since Z is equal to 2.67 is greater than 1.96, so we reject the null hypothesis. Step 5, conclusion. This is the statistical evidence to suggest that the true proportion of the people vaccinated in this community is significantly different from 30%. In fact, 40% were vaccinated, possibly indicating a higher vaccination rate than expected. Now come to Z-test for two proportion definition. The Z-test for two proportions is used to compare the proportions from two independent groups to determine if the difference between them is statistically significant. This is the formula for Z-test for two proportion. Z is equal to P hat 1 minus P hat 2 divided by square root P into 1 minus P into 1 divided by N1 plus 1 divided by N2. This is the example for Z-test two proportion vaccination rate in nursing home. The researcher found that 12 out of 34 small nursing homes had a resident vaccination rate of less than 80%, while 17 out of 24 large nursing homes had vaccination rate of less than 80%. At alpha is equal to 0.05, test the claim that there is no difference in the proportion of a small and large nursing home with a resident vaccination rate of less than 80%. This is the solution. Step 1, state the hypothesis and identify the claim. null hypothesis, P1 is equal to P2, which is the claim, and alternative hypothesis, P1 is not equal to P2. Step 2, find the critical value. Since alpha is equal to 0.05, the critical value are plus 1.96 and minus 1.96. Step 3, compute the test values. First, compute head, P1 head, P2 head, and P bar and Q bar. The step 3, uh, uh, this is the step 3, Z value is equal to minus 2.70. Step 4, make the decision. Reject the null hypothesis since minus 2.70 is less than minus 1.96. Step 5, summarize the result. This is enough evidence to reject the claim that there is no difference in proportion of small and large nursing homes with a resident vaccination rate of less than 80%. MCQs. MCQs number 1. A researcher wants to test whether the average daily calorie intake in the village differed from the national average of 2,100 kilocalories. A sample of 50 people showed a mean intake of 1,950 calories with a non-population standard deviation of 300 kilocalories. What type of hypothesis test should the researcher perform? A. T-test for mean. B. Z-test for two proportion. C. Z-test for mean. D. Chi-square test for independence. E. ANOVA test.
C.
B.
C.
It's a C.
C is the right option. MCQs number 2. A study compared the proportion of vaccinated individuals in two cities. In city A, 90 out of 200 people are vaccinated, while in city B, 110 out of 250 people are vaccinated. Which test should be used to assess if there is significant difference in proportion between two cities? A. Z test for a single mean. B. Z test for two mean. C. Z test for single proportion. D. Z test for two proportion. E. Paired T test.
D.
B.
Z test for two proportion.
D is the right option. Significant proportion between two cities.
Z-test for two.
D is the right option. MCQ number 3. In a right-tailed Z-test, a researcher find a score, Z-score of 2.15. The critical value is 1.96. What conclusion should the researcher draw? A. Fail to reject null hypothesis. The result is not significant. B. Reject null hypothesis. The result is significant. C. The test is invalid because Z is greater than 2. D. Fail to reject null hypothesis. It is a two-tailed test. E. Cannot decide without the p-value.
Beta.
B. B.
Yes, B is the right option. MCQs number 4. A researcher perform a one-tailed Z-test for mean at 1% level of significance and obtained a z-value of minus 2.45. The critical z-value is minus 2.33. What's the conclusion? A. Accept the null hypothesis. B. Increase sample size. C. Fail to reject the null hypothesis. D. Reject the null hypothesis. E. Use two-tailed test instead.
Delta.
D. Delta.
Yes, D is the right option. MCQ number 3. If a z-score fall within the middle range between two critical values in two-tailed test, what should you do? A. Reject null hypothesis. B. Increase sample size. C. Accept the alternative hypothesis. B. Fail to reject null hypothesis. E. Collect more data.
D.
Delta. C.
Yes, D is the right option. MCQ number 6. In hypothesis testing, what does it mean if Z is 0? A. The sample mean equal the population mean. B. The test is invalid. C. The sample mean is greater than the population mean. D. H1 is accepted. E. P value is equal to 1.
B.
Alpha.
B.
alpha,
B.
Alpha. Alpha.
Yes, A is the right option. The sample mean equals the population mean. MCQ number 7. The z-test is valid only when which condition is true? A. Population standard deviation is known. B. Sample size is small and skewed. C. Population standard deviation is known. D. Data is ordinal. E. Proportion is not used.
Charlie.
Charlie,
Yes, C is the right option. MCQ number 8. In a right tail z-test for a proportion with L, level of significance is equal to 0.01 and z-test of 2.25, you should A. Accept the null hypothesis, B. Reject the null hypothesis, C. Decrease alpha, D. Convert two-tail test, E. Collect more data.
A.
reject,
Uh, Z critical for right tail test at 0.01 is equal to 2.33 since 2.25 is less than
A आएगा.
2.33, so we accept the null hypothesis and A is the right option. MCQ number 9. A z-test for a single proportion is most appropriate when A. You have two dependent sample and unknown variance. B. You compare two mean of large independent sample. C. You test whether a sample proportion differ from known population proportion. D. You compare median in a non-normal distribution. E. You calculate correlation between proportion.
B.
C,
C is the right option.
B.
You test whether a sample proportion differ from a non. MCQs number 10. Which of the following statement is true about two-tailed test? A. Used only for proportions. B. Used when testing any difference regardless of direction. C. Always a critical value of 2.58. D. More powerful than one-tailed test. E. Only valid if sample size is less than 30.
Beta.
Delta.
Yes, B is the right option. This is MCQ's key. This is the YouTube channel where this video will be uploaded. Thank you.